Take a deep breath in. As you breathe in a resourceful feeling of relaxation, and as you exhale, just allow your eyelids to close. And as they close, I want you to get a sense that as you breathe in and breathe out, you're able to go deeper and deeper, relaxed. Now, use the power of your imagination to imagine a glowing light. A glowing light that for you represents resourcefulness and acceptance. As you breathe in that glowing light, feel like it's going in through your nose, down into your lungs, and filling your body with a feeling of resourceful relaxation and acceptance. Continue to breathe in and breathe out, and just allow your imagination to reflect on the consequences of the need to control. I want you to think about what it's cost you in terms of thinking time, what it's cost you in terms of emotional distress, how it's affected your mood and maybe the interaction with the people around you, maybe even those that you love the most, of trying to be in control, particularly of the variables that you're not in control of. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want you to imagine a giant pendulum swinging from left to right and back again. And as you see that pendulum oscillating, I want you to get a sense that the pendulum is shifting from left to right, and one side of the pendulum represents control, and the other side represents acceptance. I want you to get a sense that there is a natural flow from control to acceptance and back to control. And in the same way that a pendulum doesn't work, it doesn't magically stay in one side. That is also true for lives. Someone that tries to control every single variable becomes a dictator, a tyrant. And for someone that tries to be accepting of everything and every situation, floats through life like a small branch in a big ocean, waves and currents just taking it wherever it happens to float. But I wonder what would happen if you entertained the idea that as you think back of all those times that you were controlling of those variables that you're not in control of, what if that led to lots of what-if questions in your mind? Because by not being able to control the variable, your mind was trying to control all the different responses to that situation. And what if trying to control your responses to things that may not even happen leads to the very anxiety that you're trying to avoid? I want you to think about how you respond to the weather. You don't ask yourself, what if it rains 6 weeks from now? What if it snows in 3 weeks' time? What if there's a heat wave 9 months from now? You accept that because you're not in control of the weather, it would be a horrible waste of time to think too much about how to respond to weather conditions that are distant and far off on the horizon. Isn't it the case that you accept that you're not in control of the weather, and you respond to the situation as it actually is? If it's snowing, maybe you wear a thick coat, big boots, a warm scarf. If there's a heat wave, you're not in control of the heat wave, but you can control the clothes you wear specific to that day. As you entertain that you already have a good relationship with variables outside of your control in some areas of your life, what would happen if you brought that feeling of acceptance into other areas of your life? I want you to imagine how difficult it would be to plan a whole year of what you will wear, what temperature should be in your house, a full year in advance, not knowing what the weather will be on any given day. It's helpful for you in that context to just have an acceptance that although you can't control all the variables, you can control when you're in the position of influence, of taking control, and those times where you accept that you're not in control and you don't need to be. There's so many areas of your life that you're not in control of. And so is the case for every other person. Nobody likes waiting around in queues. They just believe that if something's important enough, then queuing is just a natural part of the process of getting that thing that you want, whatever that thing may be. Nobody's in control of the traffic. But sometimes we just accept that the journey may take longer or shorter depending on what's happened in the world on that day. Does it mean we should do no preparation? We shouldn't look at the traffic report or maps on our phone to see the estimated journey? And as you imagine that the pendulum shifts from control to acceptance and back to control, I want you to get a sense that in certain areas of your life, it's requiring so much effort, so much stress to hold a pendulum in the place of control where naturally it would be swinging to the side of acceptance. And I wonder how much more relaxed you would be to accept that you're not in control of everything and you don't need to be. But also to accept that acceptance itself is within your control. As I want you to think of a time in your life where you chose to be accepting because you weren't in control, and that served you very well. And when you can recall a time like that, let me know by nodding your head. And I want you to allow that memory to be evidence of a useful belief system, that acceptance itself is within your control. The ancient Stoics used to believe that you focus your resources on those things you can control, and you choose to be accepting for those things that you're not in control. And if it was good enough for the ancient Romans, maybe it's useful for you in the present to take an essence of that wisdom and know that what's more important than being in control is the belief that you can cope. You don't need to be in control of everything. All you need to do is to be in control of your decisions, to allow yourself, to give permission to yourself to accept what happens, and to know that whatever happens, you're going to be okay. I want you to imagine a future journey, knowing that this journey is just a metaphor for anything that has variables outside of your control. Maybe you're thinking before you even leave that other people are thinking about you, and just accept that people will have their thoughts whether you try and control them or not. That if you're traveling to wherever you're traveling, maybe there's delays and maybe there's not. And maybe you'll feel anxious, but so what? I want you to get a sense that you've experienced more anxiety in your life than the majority of people, and realize that anxiety hasn't killed you once, and therefore you're better prepared than most to ride the wave of anxiety, to diffuse it if you can, to accept that anxiety is a useful part of human existence, that truly to be fearless and have no anxiety whatsoever is to be reckless. There are certain people born with a medical condition where they don't feel pain, and people think it must be amazing never to feel pain, but these people accidentally cut themselves, hurt themselves, damage themselves, because pain isn't there to protect and to warn them. And anxiety is like that. In small doses, it can help you prepare. In small doses, it can be a way of protecting and teaching you valuable lessons. But if anxiety is connected to variables that you can't control, then the solution isn't to try and control. And it isn't to overthink all the different possible connotations. It's just to accept that sometimes things happen and you're not in control, and you don't need to be in control. And notice that through the lens of acceptance, that voice in your head becomes more defiant and says to anxiety, "Show me your worst. Bring it on. Whatever you throw at me, I can handle it. I can cope with it. But I will not walk away. I will not crumble." I want you to get a sense then. You've got more evidence than anyone else to prove that no matter how bad the anxiety gets, It doesn't break your spirit. And it doesn't stop you from doing those things that you want to do. So engage with that anxiety, knowing that your resources and your ability to choose acceptance exceeds anxiety's ability to try and control you. Anxiety has been controlling you and you've been trying to fight fire with fire. But from this point onwards, what if acceptance is the water to the fire of anxiety? You don't need to fight control with control. You can fight control with acceptance. And in doing so, notice that anxiety loses all of its power. Through acceptance, you can learn to dance with anxiety, to play with anxiety. And as you do so, anxiety loses its power over you until it becomes something small and insignificant. Your attitude is, if there's queues, so what? If I have to wait, who cares? In most areas of life, people reconcile that even a challenging journey is worthwhile depending on the destination. And if the destination isn't worthwhile, well, then there's no need to take that journey. I want you to accept that your ability to be discerning as to when to be accepting and when to take control, when to take the journey and when to skip the journey, not through avoiding fear, but just by evaluating that your time is precious. And why would you want to go to a destination if that destination isn't appealing for you? I want you to scan your body for where it feels like acceptance exists for you. Remember that time where you felt accepting even though you weren't in control. Locate that location within you where it felt that acceptance was there, and then expand that feeling. Grow that feeling, amplify that feeling. Allow it to ripple to every cell in your body, that you feel that you have the capacity for unlimited acceptance. But also accepting that acceptance itself is on that pendulum and can always swing back to control whenever you choose. And before we leave this place, there's one final suggestion. That too much control is out of control. Because you like to be in control, isn't it better to choose acceptance than try and maintain control when you're not in control, knowing all the anxiety and stress that brings? If your unconscious mind now believes that acceptance is within your control and that your resources are such that you can cope with challenging journeys as long as the destination is worthwhile, just let me know by nodding your head. It's now time to leave this place as you return to the present. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, get a sense that you're in your own physical body right now. As I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you, you will awaken with a high level of self-acceptance, but also knowing that you can choose when to be accepting in those times that you're not in control. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.